Hi everyone. I really enjoyed my time at reInvent for 2022. It was actually pretty big at scale when I went there this year. Contrary to other years, it was obviously more intense than I anticipated. Across 6 different casinos and obviously long distances down the strip. So look, I think one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today is what we saw as new services, what certain services have actually recently been upgraded or added to, and how it's relevant for customers here in Australia. I'll just jump straight into the first thing that I really thought was the best thing out of the entire conference was AWS Code Catalyst. So Code Catalyst actually is a supporting tool for developers who want to really just get to the job at hand, which is just cracking great code. Obviously there's certain scaffolding that you can do at the start of a release that, CI/CD, pipelines, and integration with your IDE. The inspiration around AWS Code Catalyst is to ensure that this actually happens automatically. You don't have to worry about it. You can build out your project space and start cracking code as soon as possible. You can put in rigor of administration and security around that for your team members. So understandably, if you want to just build code, you just want to do that straight away. So again, I thought that was really powerful to enable our teams, particularly in Australia, who are just trying to build more features, more functions in their applications every day with our customers. As Gerardo said before, AWS Lambda Snap Start is something that's pretty important around improving those functions, performance up to 10 times. And again, even hearing Peter DeSantis talk about this at length was interesting to understand how an actual Lambda function uses its resources. So using the underlying micro VMs to build out the function in a save state and launch within milliseconds rather than seconds is pretty impressive as well. So having millions of Lambda functions that are making lots of different operations in your accounts and losing seconds in cold starts, bring that down to milliseconds, that means that you're going to be saving a lot of time and obviously a lot of cost as well. So another interesting feature there. Something that we haven't spoken about just yet is around the VPC lattice. So obviously a few years ago there was AWS Resource Access Manager that was released, and Access Manager it gave you access to certain tools and resources between accounts. And VPC Lattice was a very, very impressive tool that's been added to the VPC networking construct around AWS. So you're able to now share endpoints for different services and apps between accounts and VPCs without having to worry about the plumbing in between. And not that that's not important, it can still be done, but VPC Lattice allows you to have those terminations of certain services directly through load balancers, straight through HTTP, HTTPS, and gRPC. So again, another preview service, but very impressive that they're getting away from classic networking to be more elegant, more fast, and obviously very innovative. Also, as Gerardo said before, verified access is definitely an interesting tool that has been created and is in preview today. So I understand that when you have a large amount of users across the board, VPN rollout is large, clunky, and can be difficult. And this is just a great new service where you can bolt onto the front of anything that has a load balancer or the termination of any web services privately, securely, and delegated through your identity center. Again, it's a service that can be just plugged in through a browser and you can access your applications, and there's no restriction on how many people you can. So it's not a licensing problem, it's actually just roll out quickly through the browser. So again, another great service. AWS have also released a new service around communication, particularly around encrypted channels. So AWS Wicker, something that was thought about, but particularly released in the mind around ensuring communications and collaborations are encrypted, secured, and will not be tampered with in line or in flight. If you have a team that are doing some pretty sensitive work, you're able to have those communications messages and the content shared around without any impact to one another, knowing that you're going to be able to ensure that that content is yours and yours alone. So again, another great service that's in preview. Not in Sydney just yet, but it will be coming soon. And last but not least, but definitely through this whole process with cloud and data management, is around AWS supply chain. I know that it's not really a technical tool, it's actually a tool to enable certain business units to provide inventory and catalogs around how they're getting their stock around and to and from different areas. But it's very interesting that AWS are not just sticking to their roots around technology. They're actually trying to support their customers. Their customers are often not just technical people, they are business users as well. And this is a great representation of that. They are looking at helping businesses go through and support their inventory so they get to the places they need to go on time. It's currently still in preview, it is going to be one of those things that will be built upon and grown upon as businesses who are not just large enterprise, but medium and small can supply with their logistics and their inventories, which is really good. I want to just also talk about one particular thing in the data space that was announced that is probably more revolutionary than it is evolutionary, which is Amazon Data Zone. Data Zone is a huge improvement around how you support the different data services and features you have in your accounts so you can govern and manage them in one place. It enables you to do things such as putting policies and rules around how your data is managed, but more importantly, when your data is saved, it's enriched and it remains rich. So you're able to allow those policies to ensure that it doesn't just stay a data lake and become a data swamp, it remains a rich data lake for good. So again, a really powerful feature that's still in preview, and it will be released to Sydney as well. AWS have also released a new service similar to that of supply chain called AWS Clean Rooms. And as we know, look, our world is changing quite rapidly, so we have a lot of businesses going through a lot of growth, a lot of change. They're splitting, they're merging, they're adding, they're adopting. And so part of that process, particularly in the legal space, is that you have certain IP and content that you need to combine as part of that merger or demerger process. So AWS Clean Rooms allows you to go through that process correctly in the right legal framework and without any detriment to either party. It's a very interesting product. Again, it is portal driven, which means that it's not just a technical service, it's actually helping businesses do their business properly, safely, and most importantly, securely. So again, really interesting to see Amazon push into this space. And last thing, as Gerardo spoke right at the start about, is AWS Code Whisperer. So one of the things that I noticed was a lot of developers, they are trying to build code that is going to be unique, deliberate, and specific to the needs of their business in a really fast and efficient way. And Code Whisperer is that tool that's going to support them through those next series of major application developments in the coming months and years. I saw a developer who had a handful of lines tab out not only the same amount of code that had actually been written, but more again. And he was just impressed by the specific nature of what those different lines of code were producing. So still, again, a very, very powerful, impressive tool. And one last thing I wanted to talk about today was definitely the AWS Security Lake. Again, having all of your event logs in one place is actually incredibly powerful, so you can apply the same policies across the board and aggregate that information and apply the right level of heuristics to get the detail and data you need. We know that when you have a security hub, it's starting to do that and you control it from one spot, but having the visibility on all of your logs and your events across all of your AWS account estate is actually incredibly powerful too. So again, AWS introducing Security Lake is a great new preview available in Sydney. So look, there are some of the new things that were introduced, but today I also wanted to talk about some of the more original things that have been upgraded. So AWS EC2 has had a raft of new family instances released, which was awesome to hear, because not only are we seeing our customers continue to use EC2 in a powerful and dynamic way, but they are introducing these families to customize workloads that are specific for the customer needs going into the next generation of high-level compute. So as you can see on the slide here, there's a raft of new family instances from standard high-density compute, high-density memory, high-density inference, which is an interesting one to say the least. And the biggest one that I'm actually interested with is the general purpose. A lot of our customers often don't know the traditional nature of their application lifecycle, so having a general purpose that can do the work in an efficient and cost-effective manner is very important. All of these new family instances are backed by Intel Xeons, some of them using the new scalable Nitro OS as well. So how does this really impact some of the customers here in Australia? So one of the things that I wanted to talk about specifically is, number one thing I spoke at the start was around AWS Code Catalyst. Again, we see a lot of customers who struggle in the development lifecycle that they go through. They stop, start, and doing the agile method can often be a bit of a hindrance because of the nature of ceremonies and sprints. With the introduction of Code Catalyst, you can actually build out your projects in a way that's going to support the ceremonies, but also the lifestyle of a developer who can often not just sit on their hands for 9 to 5 every day. And I'm really, really happy to speak with some of the feature writers of the service when I was in re:Invent, because they said that one of the things they focused on is how the code is developed. They don't want to focus on the service for the service sake. They wanted to understand the life cycle of a developer to ensure that they're getting the most amount of time to release code into their environments. It is production grade ready, so don't think that Code Catalyst is just a dev for dev tool. It is actually a production grade orchestration management service that allows you to go straight to production on the back of any release. I do want to also talk about Amazon's security lake. So one of the things that I have seen in recent years is that when you have a bunch of events, a bunch of logs, and you apply your level of maturity to your AWS estate, sometimes it can vary from account to account. And some bigger customers, they have different organizations. So from organization to organization, they have different levels of maturity. So with the introduction of Security Lake, you can then connect all of those together and actually have one single view of all of those informations in the one place. If the level of the data that you have in there is low, you're able to aggregate and average across all of them and introduce policies that will retrofit the security posture of the accounts that you really, really need. It does take into account that there are compliance metrics, and those policies reflect that as you go forward into introducing them into your account. So again, a really powerful tool, biggest level of visibility around the security services to date, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it being rolled out to customers. And again, I'm going to go back to Lambda Snapstart as well as one of the last highlights here. And look, again, we see a lot of customers doing a lot of things with Lambda functions, all from like 5 lines of code to thousands of lines of code. So in those cases where a cold start is experienced, it is painful. And when they introduced the cold start, which was a lukewarm start a couple of years ago, that introduction was groundbreaking. But having a snap start is going to reduce that down to milliseconds. I can already see that it's going to be a huge benefit for customers looking forward. I am very happy that these 3 things are going to be immediately beneficial to our customers here in Australia. But out of all of those, what do I think is the most evolutionary thing that out of all of the announcements? So 2 that I haven't actually spoken about just yet. Number 1 is the Amazon Redshift Data Ingestion Management Service from Aurora. So Adam Zablisky was talking about this in his keynote, and he talked about a world of zero ETL. He talked about how ETL was a necessary evil to get data from one place to another. It was the link between 2 environments, and it was plumbing that can often break and is often sticky tape. So the world of zero ETL, which he went into great detail and had a lot of great quips about, was really interesting, and I'm really pleased to talk about the fact that Redshift can now be the data warehouse that has all of this information ingested in no plumbing required. So you have Aurora, near real-time ingestion of that data goes into Redshift using some connectors, and as a result, you don't have to worry about jobs, sequencing, data loading, size, all of that is eradicated. So again, another really important service. However, before I finish talking about this, the one thing I enjoyed the most is that this service is actually a merge of 2 services, which is a very interesting step for Amazon to do. Services often stood on their own, they added features, but this is a really good collaboration between the Redshift team and the Aurora team. They really wanted to work closely to ensure that they get the best experience for their customers, and this is the evidence, a service that is intertwined with one another. So really impressive and a really good step forward in a collaboration inside the Amazon world. And the final highlight that I wanted to talk about today is the AWS Control Tower Comprehensive Controls Management. This is an incredibly important and also powerful service that is overlaid on top of Control Tower. So years gone by, if you had a problem with one of your accounts or a policy with your account, the enforcement of that was more detective. So if something was wrong, it'll alert you, which is great, but then you were still required to do a thing. So this new service, which is still in preview, is going to allow you to have preventative controls where it has hooks into CloudFormation and also into the launch cycle of EC2, which prevents you from doing things that are not compliant. So you can apply your compliance controls at your organization level, HIPAA, PCI, or the like. And then if you are doing something that you are not supposed to do, even if it's an accident, it allows you to get alerted and it will prevent that resource from being created. It's a preventive control that is from your organization down. You can apply it at the OU level, so the policies can be tailored, exemptions can be put in place as well. Again, it's a really powerful tool. It's just another great step that Amazon's putting forward around introducing controls in all levels and at all layers as well across all your estates. So again, a really great service. Josh, thank you.
Thank you for taking us through those awesome service announcements. If you want to learn more about how we can help you with your transformational journey on AWS, please reach out. Thank you for tuning in.